my goal today would be just to recap what we've talked about in terms of key takeaways, and for each of you to identify the key takeaways that are most meaningful for you. So ideally, you will be able to write down these key takeaways and reference them from time to time going forward until they become more like habit and you've seen some changes that you feel like are locked in and permanent. And then you can dismiss the whatever you wrote, right? So he'll be back with those. I think he's making about 6 copies. We can share them. And if you don't get a chance to look through that list entirely, please get it afterwards so that you can come up with some things to work on. And then not only things to work on, but make those things actionable as well. So pick those 3 things, but then make them actionable and get yourself an accountability partner here that you can just talk about it and touch base every once in a while. Throw something on the calendar. Take about 45 minutes to an hour a month from now and meet with each other and just talk about these things. Ideally, you will have started, but even if you didn't start, that's going to be a good reminder to start then, right? So just keep the momentum going, basically. Thank you, Rod. Can I get one of those? Thank you. And if you would, Rod, when we're done, can you update the Edison space with this? Just add this in?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So, how about a volunteer just to point out something that you've learned or been reinforced through this process that has caused you to do something different? You don't have to tell us what it was, but what's the topic that you learned about? Or another way to say that would be, what kind of actions have happened as a result of the discussions that we've had? Jim.
For me, and I think even for Jamie, for our group, the nice thing is that really what came out of this is as we read through this, afterwards we would all do like a debrief after going through this and taking notes. And so we started really talking through things like, what are some things that we're noticing and how can we change some things to maybe look at a positive rather than a negative. Or when we do hear someone complaining, is it, it shows that they're really caring about it. So what can we do to help to put a positive spin on that? And I like one of the things that was mentioned, be the light in the darkness, and for people. And so for me, I think it really brought our group together a little bit closer because Dane didn't attend this, but with our meeting, we would after this we would sit down and talk as a group, and Dane was jumping in with some comments and ideas he had. He thought it was very fascinating on some of the pieces that we were learning from the book, and so I think it was just a really good discussion, the tool that really brought us together on a few of those things. So.
Yeah, I had said be the bigger person, and that's kind of just how I've always thought about it in my head, or maybe what I was told when I was younger, like, don't react that way, just be the bigger person, walk away, or provide the leadership needed, or walk away, right? One or the other, but make a choice, and it's one of those choices are both valid in some circumstances, but shining light on the darkness is good because that's usually like the person is either in a dark place or they're just dark and blind to the idea that there's even anything wrong. So you're shedding light on that. So I like that. That's good. And I like that you guys partnered up afterwards to talk about it. It's great. What else? How about anything that has caused you to change a little bit, even slightly so, create more awareness, or some action that was created as a result?
I guess my biggest takeaway would be the 4 domains of awareness in chapter 2, the self-awareness, the other awareness, the cultural awareness, and the spiritual awareness. And not denying your self-awareness when you're in situations you feel it's just not right. Start asking questions, start addressing it, as opposed to just assuming that you go with the flow, you go with what's not being afraid to step up and talk when you have just something inside and it just doesn't jive.
Yeah, so on the topic of awareness, there's a lot of talk about awareness. And it's talked about as awareness, it's also talked about as a lack of clarity. And that's a lot of, I think there's a point in the book, it's probably one of my favorites. I noticed I had a few pages bookmarked and that was one of them. It says something about how one thing that's always true when drama is present is there's a lack of clarity. And that's awareness too, could be the reason. Like the clarity was provided, but someone is very unaware, or there is just a lack of clarity altogether, one or the other. Page 34. It's a good one. Good one. Got another one that I bookmarked here. This is kind of a shifting gears one, but this is sort of a pet peeve, or maybe like an aha moment, or something that I see new leaders especially going through, or anybody, whether in a leadership role or not, could apply this. But the only reason an employee is disruptive, lazy, confrontational, or ineffective is because it is allowed. And you could take that back to the employee, yourself, or a leader, but somewhere along the line, somebody has to address whatever those were: ineffective, lazy, confrontational, because it's allowed. Whether you're allowing yourself or your leader is allowing you to do that, then it's happening, right? If it's not allowed, then we work through it, and it's not as big a deal while we're working through it as it's like festering or fermenting, right? Like if we can just expose it and now we can work through it, we have a chance. That was one of my few that I bookmarked in here that seem maybe so simple, but for me, in an environment where I have to work far removed from a lot of situations, I need to get quickly to the idea that, listen, this is happening because you're allowing it. You being a leader or an employee, like it doesn't matter where you're at in that situation, it's being allowed. If the awareness is there and it's being allowed, then the problem is it's being allowed. So how about one more, and then we'll move on to maybe it's kind of in the same vein here, but just we could reference these key takeaways as well. What I'd really like for all of you to do, though, is to make sure that you read this and get at least 3 of these key takeaways, and then attach action items to them with your accountability partner. Pick somebody. They don't have to be in this room either. And if they're not in this room, it could be fun to kind of drag them along the exercise. Just provide this document and have them do the same thing even though they weren't here. It's kind of the Cliff Note version of the book and the whole thing that we just did. So take somebody on that journey with you. But if we don't have a lot of discussion, and I'll give you a moment again to kind of pick a topic here, what might be good is just take a couple minutes and find your few that you're going to take out of here and work on, and then we can talk a little bit about why you chose those things. How's that sound? Let's take 5 minutes to do that. You all take 5 minutes, mark down the things that are most meaningful to you, and then we'll discuss them. All right, so quickly before we move on, pick your partner. Either grab one from here or tell the people across from you that you're going to grab somebody else and you already have that person in mind. So go ahead and have your person and set yourself up about a month from now to speak. All right, I see many connections being made. So we're going to take about 15, 20 minutes here, and then I'm going to just close up with a little bit of recapping what it is I wanted to accomplish with this, and hopefully remind everyone of the idea that we came here to hopefully enlighten a few more people to become enlightened leaders, right? As the book describes it, enlightened leaders. We thoroughly covered the book, I think, as thoroughly as we could cover it during this time. So, cool. All right. So, who would like to start? around. Just give me one of your three that you're gonna work on. Casey, rapid fire, get us started.
Mine is just action in general, you know, course correction or just taking action and going with it and making adjustments as you need.
Mine is to have the tough conversations and when you feel like you might want to back off is really when you should make sure you're involved in doing the right thing.
Mine is to see challenge or obstacles as challenges, and to let that be a mark of getting to work and what this is.
To be aware that my experiences drive my perception and to have that awareness in all conversations, knowing where people are and that they're in a different place than me.
Mine would be having these tough conversations and doing the things that make me feel uncomfortable, and just to be an active listener in all conversations and not let the emotions build up in the conversations.
One that I'm going to work on would be until you're clear about what you want, you won't get it. So really finding what I'm looking for, so I have a clear path as far as how to get there.
Mine is going to be, again, going to be the light for people, and even like within our group, outside our group, and then we'll practice the active listening.
Don't follow the past, talk vision, future, fresh possibilities, not just with myself, but encouraging that with others that I've been working with. And also just, I want to look more to the environment chapter, just to help influence people that I'm working with to see, it's like be part of like understanding the environment and the human part of it.
My main one is to adapt the elements of empowerment. I really felt like that was similar to the founder's formula, and so for me, it just gave me a different way to view that, and allowing people that I'm around every day to have input and using that input more actively.
I think mine would be recognizing my involvement and owning it when it comes to like a disagreement or a dispute or any sort of drama. Just knowing that there's two parties involved and how I navigate that.
I think seeing growth through challenging situations, and what I'll do is try to be very purposeful about, I guess, actively doing a postmortem on things that were tough and hard to get through, and seeing what I can pull out from that and change.
Good deal. I'm glad you guys all found something like that. So I think of all these, there's a lot of good things in here. The thing that I have been working on for quite a while, and I want to continue to get better on, is on the last page, the 3-step approach to leadership that we kind of uncovered through discussion and turned into a 3-step approach to leadership, which is awareness, check your mindset, and take action. And I mean, it's super easy to think about that, be unaware. And then it's also easy to just be reactive instead of checking your mindset. It's also easy to choose not to take action. So like, but if you complete the full circle, that's when we're really operating at our best, when we do all 3 of those things. So I want to do something with that, because I've been trying to do that without pinpointing it and writing it down like this and seeing it in front of me. And I've seen improvement in myself in the last few years in that area, but probably most of all in awareness and check your mindset. But most of all in check your mindset, second in awareness, and last take action. That's usually not been the issue, but check your mindset is the area that I've worked at most the last few years. So I'll be working on that. That's my one thing I'm going to work on for sure, and I'll look through this list as well and see if there's a couple I can pull out of here. All right, so a final opportunity for any of you to provide comments or key takeaways before I just make some closing remarks, and then if you guys have comments about that, that's great too. But we may finish up early, so here's your opportunity to have a little discussion. I only need about 5 to 10 minutes max. So.
Can we, I know you brought it up last time, the 3-step approach, can we go a little bit deeper into the check mindset, check mindset portion of that, what that looks like, or what you're exploring in that step?
So in the check your mindset thing, this has been not only just about our conversations and about leadership, but it's gone into how I'm spending my time. So that is how I run my schedule when I'm meeting with certain people, knowing what their mindset is during certain times of the day or certain days of the week, and just making sure that I take my most valuable, my best brain time, and I use it for the things that need my best brain time the most. And I make sure that I'm doing things where I get myself in the right mood or in the right mindset before I enter a space with certain groups of people, and just getting highly aware of all that, being very intentional about my mindset. Kind of what Sarah was saying, I think she was working on with being aware of where other people are at. I can't remember exactly what your part was, but it was really understanding what's happening with the people around you so that you can adapt your philosophy. But you know, where I started with that was, it started with years ago just checking into work and being run through a day and run through the gauntlet, and then having to get to a point where I can barely hold my eyes open to finish some of the most important things that require like really deep thought. And that's just, you're thinking to yourself, like, what am I doing? So it took some like moments like that for me to prioritize this highly. But we can even fine tune that within the day. So it starts, I would say, with awareness. What is your best time of the day? Where are your biggest challenges in terms of things that your mindset might be not lining up well with the people on the other end? And then adapting your approach, either in timing or your own mindset, your communication style leading into that. It could be as simple as asking questions instead of telling in a certain environment, or really purposefully being an active listener in a certain environment. Just totally changing the way you go about things that aren't working for you, especially, right? So that's what I'd say to check your mindset is become aware of what's working really well, what's not, and if it's not working well, do something entirely different. Probably the best thing that I've done though is and I've referenced it, some of you may have heard me say, pay yourself first. In retirement planning, they talk about that, pay yourself first, and I'm sure investment professionals have been saying this for decades, but pay yourself first in the work environment, especially when I've talked to people about being strategic and thoughtful about their work. If you don't put that as a priority, you will just come in and do the work. You have to make it a priority. Pay yourself first by being strategic, thoughtful, creating a good plan, or pay yourself first by spending the best brain time you have on the most important things that day or week or all the time. So just really peeking in at what's happening in your day and how you're handling things, and changing your mindset about how you're visualizing yourself going through those processes and the other people alongside of you, that are involved and work beside you on a daily basis. All right, anything else? Any other topics? Sarah?
Well, it's just an appended piece to the topic we just started, so I can relate to the situations you explained. And do you find that since you've been checking your mindset that are you able to close the day easier for yourself, or do you still find that, I guess, does it provide you with more work-life balance to do that? Because you're doing the most important things first and then kind of tabling the other things, or is it
part of it is that I can just recognize a lot sooner because I've found the value in it. I've seen the value in how it's paid me, even just in taking specific times and doing very specific things. Like, for example, you don't get on my calendar anymore. Nobody gets on my calendar without asking me anymore. I'm blocked off. If you look at my calendar, I'm blocked off right now through August 23rd. And that's on purpose. And I used to block off my calendar every Thursday at the end of my workday for the next week, which gave everybody all week to plan out whatever, except for Friday, to plan next week. And I can plan my day on Friday. And if they need something, and then they have to ask, and I can schedule it. Now, that doesn't work for every person in every role, but I found that worked for me, and it was important for me to not get my calendar hijacked and just to be able to, run my day, or interestingly, as one of the things I learned in a training program in the last job that I had before I started here, which was the aha moment for me to decide to go into business again, was a comment around territory management in a sales capacity, and it was to don't let the territory run you, you run the territory. You can apply that to your day, or whatever. You can apply that to anything about yourself, I think. So that was extremely valuable aha moment that led me to go, oh, it was so big for me that I literally looked at it and said, this is why I haven't succeeded yet at what I'm trying to do, and made it a mission to totally change how I was going about things. That was my aha moment. And that was based on another book. It happened to be a certified trainer that trained on a book called The New Strategic Selling, which I think about 3 years ago we brought in, 2 or 3 years ago we brought in for most of our sales team and some purchasing team members, and did training facilitated by them as well. That was the book that kind of caused me to go back at it and quit a really amazing job for a great company, and one that I was learning a lot and getting paid well. But I knew this was the thing, so. But I think it's just valuing the mindset, valuing the idea that if you're very aware of how you're going about things and you're willing to change them, even all the way to the place of like changing your schedule and changing your mindset specific to the people that you're around, especially if you're in an environment where a lot of things are coming at you. Also, I take a customer service role as an example, and I'm looking at Jessica back here, and there's other members of the team around that have done or are doing that role, and you're in and out of inboxes and chats and flybys and calls and workflows and projects all at the same time, right? And that can be very frustrating, but if you condition your mindset to say, I know I'm going to get that flyby, and here's how I'm going to treat it. At some point in your career, you probably didn't treat it as good as you do today because you've worked on that. Similar scenario. So checking into the mindset can be a huge one. That's my thing. Be very aware. Awareness, check your mindset, take action. But it starts with me with check your mindset. And there's still just so much room to improve, in my opinion, on the check your mindset space for me, because I see it happening on a regular basis. Something will happen, I'll have a conversation, it won't go well, I'll reflect and I'll say, if I would have just been a little more prepared or thoughtful ahead of time, or if I would have listened better, I could have, my mindset would have changed. And so it's a pretty powerful thing to think about, but it takes a lot of focus, it takes a lot of work, and it's not a one day or 1 week thing. It's just like keep doing it, and it'll add up. All right, so we're getting down on time, and we'll have a few minutes for discussion too. I don't really have a lot to say at the end, but I want to go back to say at the very beginning, my goal for doing this was a couple things. First of all, this has been one of the most influential books on that, re-guided me to how I wanted to lead the company during a time that things were not going very well at all. And that was the summer of 2016. I happened to have had this book probably almost a year before that, and it just sat on my desk, because why would I read a book that a temporary staffing agency person brought me that put her card on the inside of it. I have no idea who she is, and I don't really want their services, right? Which is still true today. But I'm like, I don't have another book to read. I'll read this. And it turned out it was like a big slap in the face. This is good stuff. And it really got me recentered back in 2016 and was part of getting all of us recentered and back to building a culture, rebuilding a culture the way that we wanted to. The concepts are great, and so it's been influential. And my goal is to help it be better understood by a lot of people who are interested in understanding things like this better. And ultimately to help, as Marlene says, create enlightened leaders. And it's simple. It's not like it doesn't mean you're an expert. It just means you've been enlightened. That can be on the 1 or 3 things that you chose. It could be a work in progress on, redirecting your brain and your efforts toward this type of a mindset, which means, kind of what's next for you if this was it now. Garbage in, garbage out, good food in, good food out, whatever the scenario is. These are good things to spend our time doing. So I really, as a result of this, I was hoping that I would have an impact, the group could have an impact on each other by doing this process to create more enlightened leaders. So that's my goal. I hope I've enlightened some of you through the discussion. The book has been helpful, and it's definitely not an arrival, so never think it's an arrival, but it's another step along the way for all of us to, be enlightened leaders and operate in that way, because it can just as quickly go the other way if we allow it to. We can choose to not be these things, but once you have them, you start to see the reward. I can't remember what it was. Carrie, you just said, what was your one thing?
My one thing was to have the tough conversations.
Yes. Yes. I've said this 100 times to people. If you avoid the tough conversations, you're not going to grow. And the other thing I always say is, when you have the tough conversation, and especially after you get good at having tough conversations, it's an exponential return on investment. And then you're going, I should have been doing more of this for so long. This is awesome, right? But it takes a while before you get there. Some of that's environmental. Like maybe as a brand new employee, someone either would run right in and be willing to do that, or not at all, right? Or maybe not in the middle as much, but once someone is here for a while, hopefully that's the company we're building, is one where you can tackle those conversations. Point being, when you decide to do that, then you probably said that and picked that one because you've done it, and you're like, wow, that went pretty well, right? So you got to experience exactly what I'm talking about, and you keep doing it, you'll experience more of that. So that's a fun one for me to watch happen when I've seen that happen. That's great. So that's my goal. Enlightened leadership, that all of you are just growing in that way, and that this has been a part of that. And that's about all I have. I appreciate all of you that attended, and we're missing a few today. Let's get this on Edison. And I would love for those that aren't here to hear the message about just taking the time to read this and do that activity. Because this is like the Cliff Note version of the book that
interested in, and not to put you on the spot, but I didn't know if you thought about doing another group discussion like this, next quarter or further down.
I would do that. I really liked Google Work Rules. Has anybody read that one? It's a great book. They actually already have cliff notes in the back of it. There's key takeaways for the whole, that was how I thought about doing it this way, is the way they structured the book is really good. I like a lot of what they're saying. I'm not saying I 100% agree with everything, because it's kind of like Google's way, which is a little different than our way, but there's a lot of great philosophy and discussion in there. That's a good one. And then for anybody in sales or business development, even marketing, it's around the perimeter, because it's such that book I told you about, the new strategic selling, it's grueling to get through the first part of it. They're laughing greatly. It really is. Like, they beat it up. Like, this is really important. You've all read the book where they're like, you should do that. You should believe in what we're about to tell you. And it's like, I know, I'm on page 80 now. When you get to the facts, but that's kind of how it is. But once you get into it, it kind of feels more like a textbook. That's probably one where discussion would be better. But for anybody in the sales area, for sure, if you haven't read that book, partner up with somebody so you have a discussion partner. But I would highly recommend that one. And it really is just, it really helps you see the whole platform for how to sell in a non-transactional environment. That's why this training happened with the company, was because I was selling manufactured, engineered building packages for the company that built this building. So I worked for the factory company that built all the steel and did all the engineering. That's a whole different sale than selling a ratchet strap, right? But it applies, the same concept, when you get into program development and things like that. So it's mind-blowing, really. It was a huge learning opportunity, so. But you really probably could use a discussion partner, or you're gonna fall asleep trying to read it. How's that for a tough sell? The new strategic selling, it's called. Work Rules is the other one, and Great to Excellent by Jim Allamby and Speed of Trust. Those are all like really foundational things that connect really well to here. There's an 8-page, if you haven't heard about the 8-page document for Speed of Trust, just start there, read that. You can do it in a short amount of time and hit those key concepts on trust. And there will be a time in your career, whether it's today or some other time, where you're gonna have to tackle the trust conversation with people. So it's really just great to understand those key concepts in a textbook manner too, because trust is such an emotional thing. So it's a helpful tool to work through that. Those are probably the ones at the top of the list. Otherwise, I'd have to look through my books and respond, but I would be happy to do it again. I love Q&As, by the way, so try to attend them when you can. I still have those scheduled monthly. And prepare questions, ask the hard questions, Kara, and anybody else too. But, yep, so thanks for the question, Sarah. All right, cheers.